Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Nottingham PGCEi webinar. My name is Helen Spiropoulos, and I am the Admissions Manager at Stafford Associates. And joining me this evening, all the way from the university, is Dr. Rupert. Good evening to you, Dr. Rupert.
Evening, Helen, and hi to everyone. Nice to be with you.
Thank you for joining us, and what we are going to do now is I'm going to quickly chat about Stafford Associates, who we are, and I'm then going to hand you over to Dr. Rupert, who is going to chat about the program. At the end of the webinar, you will have the opportunity to type out your questions on the left-hand side in the chat box. I will go through the questions and we'll consolidate quite a lot of these questions because they do tend to be very similar. And then Dr. Rupert can obviously answer all your queries. Okay, now who is Stafford Associates? Well, we were established in 1993 and we were the first resource centre for distance learning education in the Middle East. We are currently the resource centre for 5 UK universities, one of which is the University of Nottingham. Now, we do offer a variety of programs, starting from certificates to diplomas, bachelors, MBAs, right through until doctorate. So we do have a program for everyone. And our main function in the Middle East is to provide academic and administrative support. So we are here to assist you throughout your registration process and get you that very important unconditional offer. Okay, over to you, Dr. Rupert.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Right, well, hello again to everyone. I'm going to talk to you a bit about the course. I'm going to talk first of all a bit about the University of Nottingham and the School of Education so that you know a bit about the institution that you would be working with. We'll talk about the course, what it aims to do, where it fits in and what its value to you might be. And we'll talk about the structure of the course as well, how it all fits together. And finally, some of the issues about applying as well. So I hope all of this is going to cover lots of questions that you might have. As Helen said, if there's anything at the end that we haven't covered, you can ask your questions and I'll do my best to answer those for you. So the University of Nottingham in the UK is one of what we call in the UK the Russell Group of universities, so one of the elite group of universities in the UK. So it's a name and it's a brand that's known globally as being very highly ranked internationally. So it has that kind of sort of badge of quality that goes with it. As well as being based in the UK, we have campuses in other countries too. So currently in China and Malaysia. So as well as the global work we do on courses like this, we actually have our own campuses overseas as well. Hence the quote there about the global university. As well as the general good standing of the university, the School of Education in particular is very, very highly regarded. So as you'll be aware, most things in education these days are ranked by league tables and various charts and things. In education as a subject in the UK, out of many, many courses, something like 80 courses, I believe, we're ranked 4th in the UK. So we have Oxford, Cambridge, London, and Nottingham. So we have a very high ranking for education as a subject. And in research in education, we are currently 3rd ranked in the UK. So this is one of the top institutions for this particular subject, which is really, really important. So if you study with the University of Nottingham and you have that kind of qualification, that really counts for something. And as well as just some of those things that give you that sort of name that goes with your qualification, it's all of that is based on, of course, what goes on here. So this is a department here where there's groundbreaking work going on in research. Some of the top researchers in their field worldwide. So all of what we do and what we do with you is informed by the latest knowledge about education, the latest views on education. So you know you'll be in safe hands. So we'll talk a little bit about the course itself. Let's wait for this next slide to appear here for you. Okay, so what we're talking about today is the PGCEi, Postgraduate Certificate in Education, and the I denotes international. So this is a teaching-related education qualification that is specifically geared to people working in international contexts. It's a master's level course, so it carries with it master's level credits. It's a postgraduate course, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. And we call it a blended learning course. And the reason for that is that this is a course which is a mixture of face-to-face tuition and learning at distance. So the course features 2 face-to-face sessions, 2 face-to-face weekends with tutors. So the team of tutors, so currently for the cohort we have in the UAE, we have a team of 5 tutors, of which I'm one. We come out to the UAE twice a year. So right at the beginning of the course, in the first few weeks, just as you're getting started, we have an intensive 2-day face-to-face input with you in the UAE. So we come out to you, and currently that takes place in Sharjah. We then come out midway through the course, and it's great to pick up and see you again. And we've obviously got to know you a bit by then, so it's really nice to renew those contacts. And we guide you through the second half of the course with that second face-to-face. So those face-to-face meetings are really, really important. In fact, they're a compulsory part of the course because they are the things that will get you started on the modules and give you the introductions that you need to all the other materials that you work with online. The tutors that you work with come with a range of different backgrounds and expertise in education. Some people we have on the team, for instance, have been in roles such as head teachers in school, educational consultants, people who've taught English as a second or other language. So all of us have that background in education. So my own background, for example, is that I was originally a teacher in school. I was, in fact, a teacher in primary schools some way back. So as well as the academic side, as well as the master's level work and the input that you'll get from us, you're talking to and working with professionals who have some sense of what your day-to-day routine might be. We haven't worked in your schools, of course, but we know what it is to be a teacher, to be an educator. So the course itself, as I said, it's geared towards international education. The content has that kind of slant on it. And it provides you with a really valuable qualification that can help your teaching career. It's really important to state this isn't a practical teaching qualification. So what I mean by that is this is not providing you with qualified teacher status. We don't come and observe you teaching in school. There is no practical element of the course in terms of the assessment that we do. So we don't see your classroom practice. We don't assess that or validate that practice. And so therefore, this is not any kind of license to teach. So what you'll need to do is be very clear if you do feel that perhaps in wherever you're intending to work, there's some kind of license or qualified teacher status is necessary, you'd need to check locally about what the requirement is. So this is an academic course. This is a master's level academic course that is focusing on the theory and the academic side of education rather than your classroom practice being observed. Having said that though, the course will really enhance your classroom practice. So this is something where we know from past testimony, it has an immediate impact on what you do in school. Although we're not on the course attempting to give you practical tips for the classroom, because it's a master's level course, what the ideas we give you, the sort of thinking we do, we think will transform your practice, whether you be someone fairly new in education, fairly experienced, working in elementary, kindergarten years, secondary, any age of learner, teaching assistant or teacher. We think there's something here that will have an immediate impact. Thinking of my own background with this sort of thing, when I was teaching in school, I did a master's level qualification. In fact, I did a whole MA while I was working in school. And for me, it completely changed my views about what I was doing. It was something that it massively improved me as a teacher, and it caused me to think in new ways, to have a deeper understanding, and was a really, really helpful and really motivating, enjoyable thing to do. So what you're doing here is part of that sort of master's level work. What you're doing represents really a third of a master's qualification, a full master's qualification. So we'll look a little bit more about the course and how that all fits together. So the course is a year-long course, and it consists of 4 modules. So the modules are all compulsory. There is no selection of different modules, but there is an element of personalisation in that everything that you write about in your assignments, which we'll talk about in a moment, can be tailored to your own environment. If you work mainly with special educational needs, all of your assignments can have a focus on special educational needs. If you work teaching secondary mathematics, you can focus your assignment on mathematics. And also the materials that you cover online, although the modules are compulsory, there's an element of selection that you can make within the materials. So you can choose to read and study certain parts of the content that we have that you feel are most interesting or most relevant to your needs. So there is that opportunity to personalize. So the 4 modules represent 15 credits each. For all master's level courses, there's a standard sort of equation which means that 15 credits really equates to ideally about 150 hours of study and work. People are often asking, you know, what's the workload? How can I fit this in? Is it feasible to do? And that's a common question. What we find is that, of course, this is a demanding thing to do. It does require a great commitment of time, but the majority of people that study on this course do so alongside their job, alongside usually a full-time job. 150 hours per module is quite hard to visualize. So another way of putting that is that we might think of, if we average that out, we might think of something like 12 hours a week, ideally, of study. Some people would like to do that a little bit every evening, for example. That's their working habit. Some people would prefer to leave it and do a full day at the weekend. Of course, in the school holidays, there's a chance perhaps for you to do some more intensive work and catch up if you've been doing a little bit less during term time. But if you averaged it out, we'd be looking at something like 12 hours per week. So the modules that we cover, looking at the second bullet point here on the slide, they take you on a journey. So there's a deliberate sequence of these modules. So we begin with a module which we call contexts, which is all about the purposes and the aims of education. So we get you to step back a little bit and ask yourself questions about, what is education actually for? And often what we find is we get so caught up in what we do day to day, we don't ask these big questions. So what does your school stand for in terms of education? What should education be trying to do? What are your personal principles and values on this? How does that relate to your own background as a learner when you came through education? And we think, particularly in that module, about the international context and what it is to work in international schools and to work with international cohorts of students. So we start off with that real look at what's education all about. Module 2 is about understanding learning. So module 2 is looking at various theories of learning. So whether you think that learning might be best viewed as discovery and inquiry. So some of you will be working in schools with perhaps an inquiry-based curriculum. Or is learning more about direct instruction? Some of you will work in environments where that's much more the case. To what extent do we need to control the learner's behaviour through various rewards and reinforcements? Or to what extent can learners be self-directed? So these are just some of the questions that we ask, including things to do with whether learning is individual or whether it's social. And what we're not trying to do in exploring all these different theories is try and find the right answer. We're not trying to get you to pick your favourite theory and say this is what it's all about, because education is more complex than that. What we're doing is exploring different perspectives and different ways of looking at the same thing so that you have a broader understanding. So we do all of that in the context of your own practice and your own workplace. So if you're talking in your assignment and writing about theories of learning, what we're asking you to do is to relate that to your own teaching that you do and your own learners. So you're always relating it back to something practical that you're witnessing day to day. The third module is about approaches to teaching, because what we feel very strongly is, of course, you need to understand learning and how that takes place before you can think about how to conduct your teaching, because teaching needs to be the servant of the learning. So we look in that module about various approaches that include things like special educational needs, differentiating for different pupils, working in groups and collaborating, all sorts of things to do with pupils or students for whom English is not the first language. So we look at various aspects of how we might teach and some of the issues that we face in the classroom. And again, when we ask you to do your assignment for that module, that's very, very rooted in what you do. We ask you to plan a sequence of lessons that you are actually going to teach as part of your real practice, but to plan those lessons with some of these theories in mind, and then for you to evaluate that. So again, it's something that's informing and drawing on your direct practice. And the final module, the fourth module, is kind of the culmination of this journey. So it's noted here as being a project. What it is a small piece of research. So you're going to carry out a piece of research, a piece of inquiry in the classroom, where you look at an aspect of students' understanding. So you can choose this aspect of understanding, and you'll do so in consultation with your tutor, who will advise you. And you will investigate this, gather some data, and write a kind of research report about that. So that's you becoming a more autonomous professional. That's about you finishing the course, able to investigate your own practice and to continue that after the end of the course. As it says at the end of this slide, all of those assignments are 3,000 words. So they are 3,000 word written assignments. Now, often people worry about assignments because they think, well, I haven't written before at master's level in most cases, or in some cases, it's a long, long time since I was a student and I last did academic work. So we know all of these fears and anxieties, and they are very natural, and they come up every year. So part of what we do at the face-to-face days is to look at academic writing, to look at the expectations, to break that down with you, to look at some examples, and really give you some confidence in what we're looking for and how to go about that. You also have lots of feedback from your tutor. So all of you are going to be assigned a tutor. So for example, for myself, I might have a group of 20 students that I personally supervise within the wider cohort. And for each assignment, you submit some coursework, which is based on the materials that you've worked through, which you get feedback on, so we can make sure you've understood the key ideas. You get to submit a proposal for your assignment, where you talk about what it is you intend to do and how you're going to do it, how you're going to structure it. Again, we give you feedback on that. And for the first assignment, for module 1, we also allow you to submit a draft assignment, and we give you feedback on that as well. So before you get to this stage of actually submitting your final assignment for each module, you've had various stages of feedback and support. And each of the real assignments that you submit is then met with some really, really detailed feedback from us, which helps to inform the next module as well. Your tutor, I should say as well, is also always on hand. So we can liaise with you via Skype tutorials, via emails, and we're here to support you. So you know that you have that named person. It's somebody that you've met at the face-to-face induction in the UAE, and that's that person who will see you through the course that year. So let's move on and just look at some other aspects here. So I mentioned this was a master's level course and that it represents the beginning of a master's qualification. So you may decide that the PGCEi course is a course you want to do in its own right, and that's the end of the story for you. And that's absolutely fine. It's a qualification and an award that you can receive, a certificate in education at master's level. If you do want to go on though and study further, you can use your credits towards a full MA. So you will receive 60 credits, which is a third of a full MA. So every year, lots of our students go on to study on the MA and continue their studies with us. And they then just study the other 2/3 of the MA, usually part-time over another couple of years, and they can use their credits towards those modules. As well as the general MA, people go on to use credits towards more specialised MA courses. So as you can see here, we have specialist MAs in things like special educational needs and leadership and management. Only 30 credits can be used for those more specialised ones. But if you're going on to a general MA in education, the whole 60 credits can count towards that. Okay, a sip of tea and we'll carry on. So all of the materials are available to you online. So as part of the course, you get access to a huge body of material and content. And as I've said, the face-to-face sessions help you to get some orientation around that, to understand what's there and how to work with those materials. So those materials include readings for you to do. They include links to articles. They include audio-visual materials, so sound clips, film clips, and they also include access to our electronic library. So through the university website, you can access ebooks and access further reading that you'll need to do for your assignments. So there isn't a need to be buying textbooks or having access to a local university library. You've got access to all the materials you need through the course. And you'll find those materials really comprehensive. They're updated frequently, and they're very high quality. And I've mentioned before, you've got the opportunity within those materials to zoom in and look at particular aspects in depth, and to pick out the areas within each module that are of most interest to you. The third point here, we've covered somewhat about the individual tutor support, but one thing I'd also really flag up is the role of your peer support. So typically for the UAE, for an October start, we might have up to 100 students in that cohort. We break that down into groups of around about 20 for each tutor, and you'll get to know that group really well during the face-to-face time that we have together. And we encourage you to form networks between you. So a big part of those face-to-face events is not just meeting us and hearing what we have to say, it's actually learning from each other. So there's a lot of collaboration at the events themselves, but that collaboration then continues when you go back home and you go back to school, you go back to work and work through the modules. We set up ways that you can collaborate. Sometimes people collaborate informally. They set up WhatsApp groups or other ways of communicating through social media. But we also have formal parts of the course. For example, we have group discussions and group forums that we require you to contribute ideas to. So as part of your coursework for each module, you have pieces of writing, brief pieces of writing that you contribute to these forums. And that means you can read other people's ideas, build on other people's ideas. Because this course is partly about broadening your horizons. And as well as the educational ideas that we want to expose you to, just finding out from your peers about what it's like to work in different schools. If you're working in the Emirates, for example, what's it like to work in a different Emirate? What's it like to be working in a school that has an IB curriculum or a British curriculum or an American curriculum? What's it like to be working in a territory that has certain ways of doing things that are different from where you work, and so on? So all of us live in this quite narrow world of education in terms of where we work and the norms and the way things are done. So it's really important and valuable to expose yourself to a much wider range. So those contacts you build up and those shared discussions you have and those comparisons about how things are done are going to be a really important part of the course. Okay, let's move on and have a look at how you get on and how you enter the course here. So you can see this sort of information through Stafford's website and through the University of Nottingham's website, but just some important points to pick out. As a postgraduate course, the standard requirement, of course, is that you are a graduate. So usually we're looking for a bachelor's degree, and that's usually at a second class honours level. It's worth saying that there are non-standard applications that we consider as well, though. So sometimes people may come onto the course, they may not necessarily be a graduate, but perhaps they've got considerable other experience that would count in their favour. And although that would be an exceptional case, we do look at those kind of cases on their own merit. But the standard entry is to be a graduate with a degree, an undergraduate degree. If English isn't your first language, and you haven't been educated in English, for example, then there's the IELTS qualification. So that's a qualification that you would need to secure, and it shows here the levels. So if you know about IELTS, this will mean something to you. If not, you'll be able to look up what these figures represent. But we're looking for a 6.5 minimum score with at least 6 in those 4 elements of IELTS. So another part of your entry requirements is that you are an educator. What do we mean by that? Well, I've already said that could mean lots of things. So you might be working with early years pupils, elementary or primary school, secondary level, or even older pupils. You might be a teacher already, you might be a teaching assistant, you might have another role in school. We've had a diverse range of people on these courses who've all found something for them, and the materials and the content we have is sufficiently broad and generic for there to be relevance to all of those different categories. But really the basic requirement that is non-negotiable because of the way that the course links to your classroom practice is that you do need to be in a school, you need to have access to school. So because of the assignments requiring you to draw on examples from the classroom and to carry out investigation in the classroom and so forth, you do need to have that access. I've already said here the second point about looking at non-standard applications. If you are submitting an application that isn't a standard application, then of course do be careful to make a really strong case for yourself. If you're saying that, well, I'm not a graduate, but I do have these other qualifications or experiences that I think compensate, make sure you give lots of evidence and mention that quite thoroughly. So you can see here, I won't go through everything here, but you can see here the kinds of things that you'll need in your application. And Stafford's academic consultants can advise you further on these kind of things and this kind of process. The bit I'll probably pick out though is the third point, which is about a personal statement. So it's really important to give us some really good justification for why you want to do this. So in your personal statement, there are a few things that I think are really, really crucial to make sure you cover. One is your motivation for the course. Why is it that you want to do this course? What is it you're hoping to get out of it? So we want to know about that. We want to see that you've got that passion and motivation. We want to know about your experience in school, what you currently do, not just in a descriptive way, but ideally, to hear you reflect a little bit about that. What have you realised? What do you think the issues are in your sort of workplace? You can't go into great depth, but a bit about what you do and why that's important, why it gives you a good background. Maybe you've got a breadth of experiences, you work with different learners, or you've worked in different settings. Also, your other skills that relate to your academic work. So you're going to be working at master's level, you're going to be doing these assignments. So what is it that gives us a sense of certainty that you're able to do this? Do you have a good academic track record? And finally, of course, transferable skills that might come in other ways. So have you got other skills that indicate things that you're going to need, like good communication, good time management? All of these are fairly standard, of course, so I apologise for probably stating the obvious here, but these are the kind of things that are important for a personal statement. Okay, so what we're talking at the moment really about an intake in the near future, in October. So I'm really looking forward to coming out to the UAE in a couple of months' time in October to work with the new cohort. At the moment, and I think Helen from Stafford can add further detail afterwards if necessary, that cohort's looking fairly full, but we're still, and Stafford are still taking applications onto a waiting list for this October. So that's still worth applying for this October. And you can see there the application deadline looming very, very soon. The programme itself begins on the 1st of October, and we will be visiting the UAE for the first face-to-face shortly after that. I think the next slide has some dates that we can pass on there. It's also worth saying, first of all, by the way, that there is another cohort that begins every year in March. So if you're not able to start in October, or for some other reason you prefer to work on a slightly different calendar, the same course exactly and everything I've said would still apply. There is another cohort beginning every March for the same year's process. So you can see here on this slide the dates for the workshop. So you can see that we come out to you after just really 3 weeks from the beginning of October when the course has begun, and then for that second visit halfway through. So the first visit, the first face-to-face, focuses very much on modules 1 and 2 and getting you started. And then the second visit is scheduled just when you finish module 2 so that we can set up modules 3 and 4 and help you through the second half of the course. You can see there also the financial information there, payable in dirham in instalments. And I think we're more or less at the end of our presentation there. So we're on to our questions phase. So at this point, if you haven't already, if you want to type in any questions, anything that you want to know that we haven't covered, or anything you'd like more clarification about, that would be great. And I'm going to get Helen to see what kind of questions come through, and I'll do my best to answer anything that that you raise.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we do have a question from Mark. Is it necessary to take or are there any other tests that we can submit?
Okay, well, usually it's going to depend on a case-by-case basis. So it might be that you need to contact your academic consultants and talk through your specific case. Usually, though, if your first language isn't English, and we're looking at nationality, we're looking at your educational background and how you've studied in the past, for example, then usually the IELTS is the qualification that we're looking for. But again, some of this may fall under that heading I said about non-standard applications. So if in doubt, ask the question and we'll look at your case individually.
Okay, and Victoria, I will answer your question. It's regarding attestation. I'd like you to contact myself or your academic consultant, and we'll be able to discuss the attestation process for you. The attestations in different countries are obviously a little bit different, so I would like you to either contact me or your academic consultant, and we can give you the clarifications on that. Okay, Lindsay would like to know what is covered specifically in the face-to-face, the group sessions that you'll have in Dubai, and what type of information can she actually take back to her classroom?
Okay, so the work that we do with you on the face-to-face days is really intensive. So this is going to be a tiring weekend. So we work with you really intensively through Friday and Saturday. But it's also an enjoyable and hopefully a fun kind of experience. So a big part of it is going to be, as I've said, meeting your fellow students, finding out about each other, your backgrounds, your similarities, your differences, and so forth. We then work through, I suppose, two sorts of workshop or activity generally through those days. One covers generic things, which are about perhaps academic writing, academic skills, looking at the criteria quite closely and what we're looking for, and helping you to understand the master's level element of the work. That's really important, that kind of procedural side of things. And people always want to know, how do I get a good grade? And what do you mean by a good grade? What does that look like? So we help you understand that. The other really important thing, though, is that we don't want the face-to-face to be just about giving you instructions and procedural information only. We want you to go away with your head spinning with new ideas. We want to challenge your thinking, and in the best possible way, we want to shake things up and we want to disrupt your thinking a little bit. So we make sure that the sessions also cover some of the big ideas. So for example, the first face-to-face, we're going to really delve down into what do we mean by education and what is it about and what is it for? And you'll all have ideas on that. We want to challenge those ideas and go, okay, maybe it's that, but what about this? And we want to push you a little bit to look at things in a different way, perhaps. Another of the big ideas, which is related to Module 2, is what do we mean by learning? We all could define probably what learning is. Again, we want to challenge that and go, okay, but maybe there's another way of looking at it, and another way, and another way. So the sessions also are about launching those big ideas and getting you thinking. And really, you're going to go away with more questions than answers in some ways, because the answers are going to come through your study, through the materials. What we want to do is give you that stimulus and make sure you go away primed and ready to ask the right questions and interested in the right things. And the sessions that we do are very interactive. What we're not seeking to do is stand in front of you and give a big lecture and for you to sit there very passively. We're going to ask you to get involved. We're going to ask you to talk to each other. We're going to ask you to talk to us, to have discussions, to do activities, and really make it something that's lively and engaging and motivating. As I've said, the tutors all come from an education background. We've worked in environments like schools. We are teachers at heart still, and we want our sessions to have that kind of feel. So I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour. And the second face-to-face would have a similar feel, but the big ideas we talk about will be much more about modules 3 and 4. And the generic principles about academic writing, well, by then you'll have done 2 assignments. So it will have more of a feel second time round on, well, what have you learnt from those early attempts? How can you now improve your work?
Super. And I'll answer Lindsay's second question. The degree certificate and transcript will not state online distance learning. You can get in touch with your academic consultant. They will have a sample certificate that they can send to you, so you can have a look at that. Omar has some more questions. Basically, if he wants to cease his studies, can he do so? And what is the maximum duration permitted for him to complete the program?
Okay, so there is a process for suspending your studies. This needs to be regarded really as a kind of an exceptional thing to do. So we know that life gets in the way. We know that people are busy professionals. So it's important before you begin to feel that you can make that commitment and that it will be something that you can fit into your schedule. So it's an exceptional thing to do. However, in every cohort, there will probably be 1 or 2 people who, for unforeseen reasons, that might be to do with just everyday life, family matters, health, etc., mean that they do have to put things on hold, and we understand that. We have processes. So we have something called a voluntary interruption to study, or a VIS, and that's a process by which you can negotiate with us to pause your studies and to return at an agreed date later on, which might be weeks, it might be months down the line, depending on your circumstances. There's no disadvantage to you in doing that. If the voluntary interruption is agreed by us, your grades are not affected, your qualification name and status at the end of it are not affected. We simply press pause on the program, set you some new assignment dates and deadlines after that, and you then resume and you proceed as normal afterwards. So you'll be a bit out of sync with everybody else. The second part of your question was about how long can you stop for. That's something I'll need to check. There is a limitation. Offhand, I have to admit, I can't remember the the time frame. There is, however, a period of time after which you can no longer proceed. I'm fairly certain, though, we're talking about a very long period of time. So certainly if you needed to stop for a number of months, that's not going to be an issue as long as you have a good reason for that and you can give some evidence to support that. We will try and help you.
Okay, and Victoria's question is quite an interesting one. Is there a way to gain QTS, and what would the procedure be?
Okay, so this is a common question we have, and understandably. So I've said earlier on, it's important to be really clear that this is not a QTS course or a license to teach course. It's not attempting to do that. It's a different type of study. It's something that really complements, however, a license to teach, or it really complements qualified teacher status really well, and is kind of the other half of the jigsaw, if you like. Now, qualified teacher status, if we're talking about that specifically, is really a domestic qualification. So qualified teacher status is something that applies to England and Wales. Other countries around the world, other territories have their own version of that. Some countries don't have a formal status like that. Other countries do, and it will vary from country to country, and even within the Middle East, it will vary from territory to territory, region to region in the Middle East. So it's really important to be clear about where it is you're intending to work and what the requirements would be for you to gain that additional qualification. If you're asking specifically about qualified teacher status, QTS, and therefore about the England and Wales version of that, there is a way that you can do this. It wouldn't be through the University of Nottingham, but we could point you towards other ways of doing this. There's a route, a study route called assessment only. So assessment only is a way of working in a school in the UK as an unqualified teacher initially, and then having, during one term usually, having somebody come in and observe what you do, and you collecting a portfolio of work. And through that assessment only route, in other words, no additional study, but just purely assessing what you do, you can be accredited with qualified teacher status. So a number of universities in the UK offer that assessment only route. We can certainly point you towards universities in whatever region of the UK that would offer that route. So there is a way of doing that in the UK. If your question was more general and relating to a different territory, you'd need to check in that local area what the requirements would be.
Perfect. And Omar's question is, can at any time, can he attend any lectures physically at the campus throughout his study?
Okay, so if you're working on the PGCEi, one thing I should have mentioned, I suppose, right at the beginning is this: you'll be part of a huge family. So this is a course that runs every year, twice a year, as we've heard, in the UAE, and covers that Middle East region. We have cohorts, though, all around the world. Currently, there's something like 900 or so students all over the world working on this course. So if you were really dead set on working and coming to the University of Nottingham, and you want to study physically here at the University of Nottingham, there is actually a Nottingham cohort you could join. You could do the very same course, and you could come and spend a week and do your two face-to-face events together, really, in one single week here at the University of Nottingham. And every July, so it's after your term finishes, every July we have a cohort here in Nottingham doing that. So you could join a different cohort and do that. If you're in the cohort in the UAE, there isn't a direct mechanism for you to study and attend lectures here, because lectures in Nottingham will be geared to specific other courses that you need to be registered on. If you are continuing master's study, you could come to Nottingham after your PGCEi in the Middle East. So you could come here and do a summer school with us. Just a couple of weeks ago, for example, it was great. I was here on the campus here in Nottingham, and I bumped into somebody from the UAE cohort from the year before last, who I'd only ever met out there in the UAE at the face-to-face events. And here she was in Nottingham, and we had a chat outside the building here, and she was here doing a summer school for some MA modules. So she got to come to Nottingham in the end. So you can do that, and you can certainly come and see us here. The other thing I think I would just say, which relates to that, is if during your year you did happen to be in the country and you wanted to stop by and you wanted to visit your tutor and by arrangement drop in and see us, then that's fine. You know, we'd love to see you. So you can do those things, but there isn't really a standard lecture program here that you'd attend if you're in that Middle East cohort.
Right, and Victoria, your question on the face-to-face workshops, they are scheduled for the 20th and the 21st of October. That's the first workshop, and then the second one is in March of next year, which is the 9th and the 10th of March. And your academic consultant has probably sent that through to you already. But if you need any further clarifications on that in terms of times that they're going to be held, do get in touch with us. Okay, any other questions? I think your presentation was excellent, Dr. Rupert. I don't see very many questions this evening.
Okay, well, hopefully that's a good sign. What I'll do is I will find out about that detail that we touched on about the maximum time that you can suspend your studies for, and I'll let Helen know about that. And then I'm sure, Helen, you can figure out who it was that asked the question, and you can contact them directly if that's okay. Would that be all right?
Absolutely, will do. And just to add as well, this particular webinar is being recorded as well, so you will be able to get the link to this recording. So you're very welcome, you know, to go back to any questions or clarifications that you need, and that will also be sent to you by your academic consultant shortly. Okay, well, Dr. Rupert, I don't see any more questions. I think that's it for this evening.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure. Obviously, I was going to say it's been a pleasure talking with you. It's a funny kind of conversation, isn't it? Because I'm seeing comments from you rather than interacting directly. But it would be lovely to think in a couple of months when I come out to your region that I'm going to get to meet some of you face to face. And if not this year, then perhaps the year after that, or perhaps you'll join a March cohort. No, thank you all for joining us for the webinar tonight.
Thank you again, Dr. Rupert. It was a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. And we will be in touch soon. Good night to you all.
Okay, goodbye.